So the first exercise that we're going to do is the RDLs with the bent rows. The muscles used in this exercise are the hamstrings, erector spinae, and your rhomboids. The joint action is knee, hip, and shoulder extension and elbow flexion. A regression of this exercise would be using a resistance band, and a progression of this exercise would be performing it on one leg. A variation could be using a barbell or dumbbells, whatever your preference is. So what you're going to do is grab the weight. You're going to want to keep a nice neutral spine aligned with your head. At the heels, you're going to have a slight bend at your knees. You're going to slowly hinge at the hips, keeping neutral spine, and then you're going to retract your scaps and bring the weight up to your armpits. Turn back down, and then return to starting position. The second exercise is the lateral lunge with the lateral raise. The muscles used in this is the deltoids, your quads, and your glutes. Joint action is shoulder abduction and hip adduction. A regression of this exercise was doing a monster walk while performing the lateral raise, and another progression would be having a roller for the lateral lunge and then performing the lateral raise. So key points to remember when doing the lateral lunge is to slight hinge at the hip, but not too much where you're falling forward. Try to avoid the shift of your knee going outwards and inversion of your ankle. When laterally lifting the weight, avoid hyperextending your back. You want to keep your core engaged and avoid bringing the weight higher than your shoulders. Okay, so turn back up. Okay, so now the third exercise is going to be the squat with a shoulder press. The muscles used in this exercise are your glutes, quads, your deltoids, and your triceps. The joint action is triple extension along with elbow and shoulder flexion. A regression of this exercise would be performing it on a bench where you're able to sit down and then perform back up, or using momentum from the squat and your way up to bring the weight above your shoulders. And a variation would be using a barbell. Key points to remember for this exercise is that you want to have your feet shoulder width apart, maybe slightly beyond that point. When you go into your squat, you want to focus on keeping your weight on your heels, keeping a neutral spine. And then when you go into the shoulder press, be sure not to hyperextend your back. Make sure the core is still engaged. Okay. So what you're going to do is have the weight by your shoulders. And another key point is when you bring the weight above your head, to rotate it so your palms are facing away from you and the back of hands are facing towards the back. Okay, so we're going to have a squat. Turn back down. Okay. The fourth exercise is the deadlift. So this works the the quads, the erector spinae, the traps, and the glutes. The joint action is triple extension. A variation would be going into a trap bar instead of using a barbell or dumbbells. A regression would be using a resistance band. So key points to remember when doing the deadlift is that you want to, once again, just like with a squat, you want to have your shoulder or your feet a little wider than shoulder width apart. Make sure that they stay forward and your ankles stay forward. You want to bend down to lift up the weight. So into like a squat position to lift up the weight. And then using your legs and your hips, you want to return back into the starting position. Avoid hyperextension of the back and then return back down. Okay. The last exercise is the kettlebell swings. So this works your glutes, it works your deltoids, it works your quads, your rectus spinae, and rectus abdominis. The joint action is triple extension. So a progression of this exercise would be using one hand, and a variation would be using a barbell, a kettlebell. Okay, so key points to remember this is that you want to explode with your hips, and you want to avoid hyperextension of the back. You don't want to lose engagement in your core, and you also don't want to bring the weight so high up that you lose control of it. We're also going to keep the weight on our heels when we go into the bend, and when we bend, we are going to go into a hinge/squat position. So